Whoa, welcome everyone to the Xamarin.Forms 4.0 launch event live stream extravaganza. Hope everyone's doing good. We got a lot of people on the chat, so many that you can't even see them all. There's people hidden in this chat room. There's like, how many people do we have in the on my Teams call? Yeah. 6 people? So
plenty. I'm looking at the chat where people are coming from. I'm seeing like Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and then there was a Kentucky.
Yeah, we're live on Twitch and on YouTube, on the Xamarin Developers YouTube. So everyone's saying hello from all over the world. So welcome everyone. Yeah, so this is gonna be super duper exciting because not only are we live streaming, this is the first live stream on the Xamarin Developers YouTube. So please subscribe. We put out content twice a week over on the Xamarin Developers YouTube page, and that's where you'll see live streams just like this. And this video will be archived on the Xamarin Developers YouTube, so you can watch this back later if you have to leave or something like that. We know it's midnight in some places, but it's there. And we're really excited. Just yesterday, David put out a beautiful blog post talking about the announcement of Xamarin.Forms 4.0 that is now readily available. And that coincided with our release of Visual Studio 2019 16.1, in which Xamarin.Forms 4.0 is in the template. So it's all available. And there was also a release for Visual Studio for Mac. Is that correct, David?
Yeah. We did a service release for Visual Studio for Mac 8.0 something that included the template bump and Xamarin.Forms 4.0 to make sure that everybody got the latest. Beautiful.
Well, we have a super action-packed live stream for everyone. So this is kind of our first time doing something like this, so we're super excited to show off everything. So I'll be sort of the MC, if you will, over here in Redmond, Washington, in the beautiful Channel 9 landscape that you might be familiar with our .NET community stand-ups that we do. But we're gonna go through and we'll first do some introductions. We have some great demos showing off all the brand new features of Xamarin.Forms 4.0. We also have some great people from the community, like Gerald on here, going to come and talk about some things, some soon to be other, even more cool things happening there. And then we're going to do some round kind of table discussion, basically, just talking about Xamarin.Forms 4.0. We're going to field your questions, and then we're going to update some applications live. So it's kind of like a whole bunch of things inside of here. So you're going to find out everything that's new in Xamarin.Forms. It's not like a presentation. This feels like, it's a live stream. It's interactive. I'm monitoring the chat in real time so you can see everything there. But let's first, before we go anything, let's go around the room and introduce everyone. So I'll go first since I've already been talking for a billion minutes. But I'm James Montemagno. I'm a program manager for all of our mobile developer tools in Xamarin here at Microsoft. Do videos on the Xamarin show on the Channel 9 page and the Xamarin Developers YouTube right here. So mash that subscribe button, and that's me.
Woohoo! Hey, everybody. Dave Ortinau here, program manager for Xamarin Mobile SDKs. And big thanks to James for hosting us and doing this. 4.0 has been cooking for a long time, and we wanted to make sure that we gave it as much attention as we could, because super proud of the release, even more proud of what you, the contributors and the community, have done to help make this release what it is. Not only just your feedback, your input, telling us what's important to you, but also contributing. So I'm excited to be able to bring that to you, and also to have a whole host of other people join us from the team and the community. But maybe we'll go over to Gerald first, and then whoever's after him. There's probably a list. I can't see the list because I'm already sharing my screen.
Sure, I'll go. So this is my first chance to just pronounce my last name right. I mean, this has always been a problem, right? So my name is Gerald Versluis from the Netherlands. Long-time Xamarin user, Xamarin.Forms user, also got into some contributing over the last 1 or 2 years, which I've really enjoyed. And yeah, I think because of that, I have been invited to this awesome live streaming thing to show a thing or two and share a thing or two on contributing.
Nice.
Yay.
Let's go, Rui.
Hi, I'm Rui. I'm in Portugal, and I work in the Xamarin.Forms team for 4 years now.
Time goes fast, huh?
Yeah.
And then we'll go Shane, since that's everyone on the screen. There's more people hidden behind.
Hello, I'm Shane. I'm a senior engineer on the Xamarin.Forms team. Yeah, I've been here for about a year and a half, and that's my intro.
Nice. How about Samantha? Or Sam? Do you go by
Hi,
Sam?
everyone. Yeah, I'm Sam. I'm the engineering lead for Xamarin.Forms. I'm based out of San Diego, so it should be sunny, but it's not today. So, oh well. That's me.
Check out those guitars. I've never seen the guitars.
Those are my husband's, not mine. I don't play.
And who's left? We got
Stephane?
Stephane. Yeah, he's hidden somewhere.
Me. Hey. I'm sitting in Belgium. I'm Stephane. I'm on this team, on the Xamarin.Forms team forever, since the beginning of the project. So ask me anything about Xamarin, for example.
Nice. So really we have, what was that, four countries represented just from the Forms team. 3 different cities in the US, 4 different cities in the US, which is pretty awesome. So we're all over the world, just like everyone that's in the chat hanging out. So what we're going to do first is kind of introduce you to Xamarin.Forms 4.0, and David has a little, I guess, presentation prepared, a little slide deck-a-rooney. I'm excited.
I do. However, I just looked over at the chat and see that Paul is thanking me for not saying anything about the Blues in the Stanley Cup Finals because he's a Blackhawks fan.
Wow.
So technically, I guess I didn't say anything. I just read what you said, but now everybody knows.
Yeah, there you go.
St. Louis Blues in the Stanley Cup Finals. Woo-hoo.
I don't know anything about sports, sport ball. I don't know.
You
about
do
that.
too. You go watch soccer games.
I do, but that's like, it's different 'cause it's soccer. So.
All right. Are we sharing my screen? Is everybody seeing this yet?
You are good now.
There we go. All right. So well, I'm going to give you a quick run through, give everybody a quick run through of what's in this release.
Is this just your, what am I seeing here?
You're seeing a beach. I wanted to make sure.
Just want to make sure that was correct.
Everybody's probably wondering, what is the image behind all this stuff? And I wanted to show you why I chose this image, because Xamarin.Forms 4.0, the theme is shell. And every time I think of shell, I think of the beach. And wouldn't we all rather be there probably than where we are now? So anyway, that's the image behind the image. So let's continue. Something more important and interesting, if my slides will go forward. There we go. All right, so Xamarin.Forms 4.0, what we're calling the shell era. I just made that up. I was writing the blog post. But I really feel like shell is the way to go moving forward. Now, you still have tab page, you still have master detail page, navigation page. All of your existing stuff still works. But I think once you start using shell, you're really going to fall in love with it like I have. The simplicity, the flexibility, the renderer architecture. It's just so much to love about it. And it's really the framework or the where we're going to be going. It's the foundation for what we're going to be shipping in the future. It really enables some new interactions, animations, transitions, segues. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So here's what we're going to talk about real quickly. I'm going to give some highlights and then do a demo. And then after that, I'll turn it over to Gerald, and he'll, and this is kind of recapping some of what James just said, but we're going to do the community contribution and talk about what he did, what his experience is contributing. For those of you who have contributed, you are well aware, but for those of you who consider it, you may be on the fence and you're wondering, how can I get involved? Maybe this is a good story from Gerald for you. And then we're just going to tell some stories from the release notes. We'll have some, kind of round table behind the scenes. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what went well, what didn't go well. I mean, it's not a Scrum, recap or anything like that. But let's just be very transparent about how we go about doing our work and what it's like getting a release like this out there to you. What drives us. And then, as we have time, Shane and we will do the Smart Hotel 360. We'll update that from whatever archaic version of 3. Whatever it's on I'm assuming it's on 3 something. Maybe it's on 2.3 or something. Who knows? It's quite old.
Yeah, it's on 3.6.
It's on 3.6. Oh, good. So we're not far off.
Yeah.
And we'll get that updated to 4.0. And because that's one of the things that we hear a lot is we want it to be easier to update. Not only Visual Studio updating that, but making sure that when you pull down a new version of Xamarin Forms, that you don't have to be in fear for your life, right? That you're going to suddenly miss a deadline because you're in a rat's nest of upgrade NuGet dependency errors. All right. So I'm already spending more time on this than I planned, but I'm just so excited. And I also did bring a beverage with me, which you probably can't see, but I've got my bubbly, sparkling water to celebrate. Very good. So the highlights from the release. Shell is obviously the big one and really where the majority of our effort went. But there's some other things in here that are extremely important and valuable, and I wanted to make sure that caught everybody's attention. So FastRenderers, first of all, and then image source, we've done quite a bit of work to unify that. And then we've done some more pushing forward on the accessibility front to help you more easily make your mobile apps accessible, because we feel like, if it's easier to do, more of us will do it, right? And then we have Shell, which again is the majority of the release, and I'll do a demo on that. So a quick recap on what FastRenderers are for those of us who have forgotten.
Yeah, I think the last time I heard FastRenderers was like when we released them a long time ago, and you had to go enable them, correct?
Yeah, you had to enable them. And it's set flags. You had to go in and say, give me FastRenderers _experimental. And of course, whenever you would put experimental on something, that should be an alarm bell, should be a red flag to you that you need to be very careful about what you're doing. So the idea behind the FastRender is simply to correct an architectural decision or to improve an architectural decision that was made initially with Xamarin Forms, where when you would ask for a button, what you actually would get on Android on the platform side is a button render, which I believe, and Samantha and the team can correct if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a Forms view group, right? And then within there, you actually have the actual button that you wanted. And so what this means is you've got multiple inflations happening when you really only just wanted one. So the team came up with the idea of refactoring that to make sure that we could reduce that inflation cost to just one. And we looked at the top 3 controls to do that to, and that was button, image, and label. So those are the 3 controls that currently implement it. And if we look at what this really translates to from a hierarchy standpoint, this is what you would get if you did not use them. And then when you add FastRenderers, you can see that it greatly reduces the number of views that need to be inflated. And some of these didn't make an impact because Web View Render, for example, didn't get the FastRenderer treatment. But in terms of what was the biggest bang for the buck, those are the 3 controls we did. And so we shipped that, I think I put it in the blog post. It was quite a while ago. And then we sealed it because we weren't sure where the API was going to go and what changes we might need to make, but we had plans for it. And Shell is kind of the destination, or at least the next pit stop along the path. I hate to say that we've ever arrived, right? Because there's always things we can do to improve. But that was the evolution of the FastRenderer, and so now it's been at least a year, and time has come, and we've been asked by many of you, hey, when are you going to unseal them? When are you going to let us extend them? And when are they going to be the default? And so that is now. So they are now on by default. So if you're using Android, you get them for free. And if you have extended the old renderers, or you're using a third party of any kind, maybe an open source thing or anything that depends on those legacy renderers, then we've given you a different flag. You can remove that FastRenderers experimental flag. You don't need it anymore. It'll just be ignored, I believe, for now. And you can now adopt the use legacy renderers if you need to go back to the old button image labels. But seems like from all indications, you probably won't need that, and you can now just benefit from the performance of FastRenderers by default.
Yeah. Yay! So one question I know that I got about FastRenderers from the chat and from people talking about the release highlights. Maybe the team can kind of talk about it. So a few questions on FastRenderers, like are there plans for more than just the 3 that are there? And also, what is the actual implication of the difference? Like, has these been on for the entire 4.0 preview? So if I've been using the pre-releases, it's good to go. And then, like, does it actually mean like the UI will change in some way? So maybe this is more down to the team level that can comment on some of those? Question mark?
Who wants to take it?
I will. Yeah. So as far as any new controls, we are planning to slowly move the rest of the renderers over to this architecture. And any new controls that we've been adding are already using the FastRenderers architecture. So, like, for example, the new visual renderers are using the same pattern of FastRenderers. So those by default get that speed boost as well.
So are there a lot of legacy ones that are still there, or is it that the majority now, what you would say, are fast renderers?
There's still a lot of the legacy renderers around, and we found that those are used a lot less common. Just like Dave said, usually your apps are going to use the buttons, the labels, the images. The other ones, you're not going to use a whole bunch of web views on a page, for example. So that cost that you're getting from that extra view render is a lot less.
Got it. So because you could use 100 web views, right? Like that's something, I like to create list views that have every cell is a web view. No?
Sure.
Okay. Just kidding. No, but I agree. Lots of labels and buttons. That's good to know. And then one question from the chat that came in. What if you have a custom renderer, like in general, like does that impact fast renderers? Can you make your custom renderers fast renderers, or are they already fast renderers?
Your custom renderers are basically already inheriting from the legacy renderers. That's not going to change. We're not swapping that out from under you. If you want to go update your renderers to use the fast renderers, you can do that now because we have unsealed them. And we've opened up the extension points. It's not the easiest thing to move them over, but it's not difficult either. So,
gotcha. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So if you were inheriting from a button renderer, is there like a new button renderer then? Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they're under the fast renderers namespace.
Perfect. All right, cool. That makes it easy. Easy peasy. Great answers. I don't know. I think that's about... I asked like 5 questions, so I think that's good. Yeah. Anyone else want to comment in on fast renderers?
Yeah, just a comment. If you are using pre-releases, the flag is not on by default, but you could. So you have to be tested with the flag on.
Oh, so during the pre-release were they on by default for people?
Until the last pre-release, I think.
I think pre-10 is when we flipped it on.
Yeah.
And do people see like an actual difference between a button that was a fast render and not a fast render, or should it be exactly the same? Like, is it if I update to 4.0, is it going to look different?
They should be exactly the same. Okay. And if they don't, then please file a bug and we'll take a look.
Perfect. All right, cool.
Awesome. Good answers. Good questions. I love it. This is exactly what I wanted. All right, image source. Let's talk about this for a minute. So I don't like this. This is the kind of thing that makes you sad, right? Something like font image source comes up where you can start using font icons, and it just makes your life so much easier. And then as soon as you try to use it, you get something that says, oh, I'm so sorry, we don't support that type. And you're like, no. But now you can use them. So Matthew Leibowitz did a very nice PR for us that unified all of the image sources across the board. And so now you can use not only font image source, but all of the other image sources that you've been using previously. You can use them consistently throughout. So what this means is that we've deprecated, if Sam, is that the right way to say it? Deprecated, obsoleted? I don't want to use the wrong word.
Yep, that's right.
All right. So it's been deprecated. And so what that means is if your app is using button.image, menu-item.icon, it still works. It's still fine. It's still there. You're not going to get IntelliSense for it anymore. You won't get a squiggly, though, either. So that's nice. But you will be pushed towards using image source, icon image source, and all those other ones on the right-hand side. And that way, your existing stuff continues to work. But now you have the unified sources on the right And you can freely use the glorious font icon image source, which has anybody used this? Anybody in the chat? It's really, really nice, super convenient. I'm using it all over the place now.
Yeah, I use it. I did a whole blog post on it. I changed a bunch of stuff in my Xamarin.Forms app. It's super nice. I like this too because you always had to kind of guess at what the stuff was. But if you just, in IntelliSense, you can do you could just type in image source and then the correct things would come up, right? Instead of like, is it icon? Is it an image? Is it, something else? That's cool.
Well, and I've got a question for Stephane, since he mentioned that he's been around since the very, very beginning. So Stephane, why weren't these just all the same source type to begin with?
Oh, because at first all the images in Xamarin.Forms were just file images. So it was actually links to bundle resource or to images declared and manifested in Android. That was just it. So we had a single one. At some point for iMage, we thought that it would be nice to be able to load images from the web, because some people do that, or to load images from a stream, because we've had at the I don't know if they still do that, but we had people writing image editors fully in Xamarin.Forms. So they wanted to be able to load images from a stream. So we added the multiple image sources for iMage. But at the time, the work involved to do all of them was that the work was too important at the time, given the resource we had, and so we did the one for iMage, and we shipped the first version of Xamarin.Forms like this. I'm glad we fixed it.
So does this sort of open up the path now that things have sort of been streamlined? We had a lot of questions in the chat around performance, around vector, around third-party libraries like FF image loading, for instance. Like, does this help kind of streamline some of it, or what are the implications there, like going forward with images? Because images are pretty essential to apps, right?
Basically, you were since we changed, since we allowed multiple sources for images, you were able to replace the native part with dependency execution that was handling the image loading. So we had John Peppers do that.
GlideX.
For GlideX. That was already possible, but that was only for images. Know that the work you've done to load the images the way you want is available for every place that you use an image in Xamarin.Forms.
Gotcha.
That's it, friends.
Oh, that's fantastic. I didn't even realize that. I knew I was going to learn things on this stream too. Yeah.
Always be learning. Always be learning.
Absolutely. Any other questions before we move on?
I think that's good.
Okay.
I'm monitoring some stuff in general, but yeah, it looks good.
All right. So that's images. Let's talk for a brief moment about accessibility. So as I mentioned, this is kind of one of those categories where we just continue to push it forward to make it easier for you, because Xamarin.Forms is native, meaning that you're using native iOS, UIKit, etc. You're using native Android, UWP, all the platforms. You get the native accessibility support that's already provided by them. We don't have to go re-implementing any of that sort of thing or faking it or whatnot. So that's a huge advantage when you choose to use Xamarin over, say, a platform that draws everything, where they essentially need to go in and pipe in accessibility hooks. But there are things we can do to make it easier for you to access those features of the underlying platform. And so tab index is one of those things that you could have always done. You could have gone down to the renderer level and accessed these properties. But we've done additional work at the forms layer to make this nice and easy, so that you can just specify that. So what this means is the tab index sets the order in which a screen reader or an assistive device will move through the elements sense of the UI. So it's zero-based index. You can use the traditional hacks like setting a -1 to kind of get things at the front of the queue. And so that goes the same for, I saw in the sample code, there was a -2 as well. But typically it's zero-based index. You set the index the way you want it to, and you'll inherit that. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking back to all the accessibility work that I did when I was doing Flash and Flex work, which was one of those drawing-based platforms that had to really implement all of its own accessibility work. And when we were doing work for the CDC and the NFL, it was a joint thing. Everything had to be approved, right, for accessibility purposes. It had to receive a top rating. So one of the things that would happen in that framework is the order in which things appeared in the list here, for example, if I didn't specify a tab index, I could get them to all be in the order in which they appear. So my question to Samantha is that happening here, or what is the tab index, for example, on the button text 4, button text 5?
Yeah, so it does go based on declaration order unless you subvert it with the tab index.
Okay. So as soon as I start adding tab indexes into this visual tree, I'm now in charge, right?
Well, the ones that don't have one specified are still 0. So your button 2 will come up first, and then 3, 4, 5, and 8. So they're basically going to come up in the same order that you got it here.
Okay. Good. Good to know. Glad I asked. Always be learning. All right. So that is accessibility and the work that we've done for tab index. I'm not spotting any questions. James, does anybody have questions about that?
No, you look good there. I also linked to the video that I did with Alexander on accessibility with Xamarin.Forms, which was a super good one to take a look at, because he goes over like how to actually test it on your device and add some of the existing accessibility properties that are inside of there. You see that is in accessibility tree, for instance, there. And there's other identifiers that can be used, which is really cool.
Sweet. Yeah, I noticed you'd done a video with him. I hadn't had a chance to watch that yet, but I got a chance to talk to him a couple months ago. Very insightful.
I guess the one question we have before we move on about it is, what's the best way to necessarily like test this with talkback, and does the tab index have implications there, like, in general? Or just accessibility in general, like what's the best practices there? We know that it's very important, not only to it's for everybody involved. So,
well, I will say that we have talked to the App Center team about Test Cloud and ways in which UI tests might better support testing for accessibility. It's a hard thing, right? It's not nearly as straightforward as other kinds of testing. So I know that they are doing some investigation there. They may have already made some progress there, if anybody happens to know. But I do know it's something that has come up before in the past in terms of automating that testing. Samantha, maybe you can comment on how we validate and test these things in our process.
For us, it's very much a manual process. So you really can only test accessibility on a device. You can't test it on your simulators or your emulators. So you have to actually pull up your device, turn on VoiceOver on your iPhone, or turn on TalkBack on your Android device, and actually go through it and use it, as if it's how you need to be using it. One of the cool things about the iPhone devices is that they have the ability to turn on a screen curtain, which will actually turn off the screen, and then you can't see what's happening. So you literally have to use the accessibility controls in order to navigate your app. So that's one of the things that I do in testing these things. So.
And how much fun is that?
It is so much fun. Definitely look up the shortcuts on how to turn VoiceOver off, because you will lock yourself out of your phone.
Yeah. So you can't just say like, "Hey Siri, undo the curtain."
No. Oh. It's a very specific gesture. It's a triple tap with 3 fingers to turn it on and off.
Oh, wow. I will make sure not to do that on accident. But it builds a lot of empathy for people that have to live with that, right?
It does, for sure.
Cool.
Let me go back to your slides here, and you're good.
I just learned about that gesture from Sam, so.
Yeah. Well, so when we talk to customers about using Xamarin.Forms and accessibility, and as a matter of fact, we have a call later today with one of our internal teams. There was a news article which some of you may have seen about the Clooney Foundation that is shipping a kind of a social justice, holding people accountable app for their foundation, and we worked with them on that. We being Microsoft, and so we help support our internal teams on helping them make those apps accessible. But when we talk to customers, we'll often ask, how are you testing it? And the answer we almost always get back is it's a manual process. But like I said, hopefully App Center and Test Cloud, because those are real devices, can come up with some ingenious thing for us. All right, so let's talk about Shell. Some very exciting things happening here, obviously. So I wanted to kind of set the stage real quick on why we made Shell. Has anybody ever seen this error? Anybody on the call here? Surely.
Definitely.
Surely somebody's run into this.
I did it, and then I used the navigation page, right? I mean, it tells you what to do. No?
Yeah.
Tells you exactly what to do, which is nice. But it's also kind of like, why? Why did I even get this error? You know, I mean, who would build an app that didn't have navigation?
Because the default templates don't have a navigation page in them.
Because they don't have a navigation.
Because it's a blank
page.
app. It's a blank app.
It's blank, but it has a page, right?
It has a page.
I'm like, oh. So yeah, I mean, the simple thing, we can just provide navigation pages and hope that people pick up on the fact that that's what's really happening here, or that they read this message. But even better if this just isn't even a thing, if you just don't even need to know about this. So similarly, we hear from a lot of folks that dealing with tabs and all the things that need to happen to make that happen is just kind of hard, right? So in this example here, you've not only got the tab page itself, but you've got navigation pages nested within it, providing it icons, which may or may not handle platforms the same way. You have to pass in an argument, which for me, I don't know about for everybody else, but for the longest time, I did not grasp this arguments syntax in XAML. Just was foreign to me, even though I'd worked in other similar markup languages. And then, so it can get even more complicated from here. But this is a lot easier, I think. And as we've heard from many, I think you think this as well. So this is Shell, and you can just straight up say, hey, I want a tab bar, and I've got two tabs. It's a Browse tab and an About tab. Here's my icon. Here's my content. And you're done. So whole lot cleaner, whole lot easier to read, much more straightforward, and you're off to the races. So let's take a look at flyouts. So this is your master detail page, right? So you've got the master detail page on one side where you're going to specify a menu page, and then on the right-hand side, that's what I've got over there. I've got a simple menu page. There's a little bit of design time data in there to help out. But overall, still a lot of stuff going on here. Nested navigation pages, content page down in there, icons and all this stuff. And that's not everything. There's more. So you also have to have your data to supply to it. You've got to handle your click events. You've got to dispatch your own navigation back to the root page. How did you even get the reference to the root page? And then on top of that, you've also got all this other logic to handle all your navigation. And it's just like, why? Oh, and there's a task delay of 100 milliseconds. I'm sure somebody knows why that's there. Anybody? Why is there a 100 millisecond delay?
So the 100 millisecond delay was a hack that I put in originally for Android, and I added it there because the Android flyout navigation, the native one, if you don't put in this little delay, then the drawer will be attempting to close and loading your screen at the same time. So there causes a UI delay, and I didn't want that, so I delayed navigating to the new page. So that was the James Montemagno hack. So.
Well, and I think that most of us probably end up doing something similar. That was what I guessed was happening. It was allowing the animations to not collide. But at the same time, you're kind of like, as a new developer coming to Xamarin.Forms, this is a lot of different concepts and edge cases to understand. So what if it was just this? So this is what shell provides you that does all the same stuff. Flyout item, shell content, flyout item, shell content. So much more straightforward. It's using a templating system, using those data templates to make sure that you're not eagerly creating and inflating a bunch of views. It provides it for you when you need it, and just a whole lot easier. And it's a whole lot easier to understand, unless you really want to embrace all this stuff. And this stuff is all still available to you, all still works today. But I think that, I mean, can we agree that this is a whole lot nicer and cleaner?
I think so, yes. Yes. The question we got from the chat is, can those icons be fonts now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm doing. So I think I might have that in the code that I'm going to demo here in just a second. So if that's the case, I'll definitely highlight that. I know, right? Pretty awesome. And it's demo time. All right, let me get my phone going here.
So we did get a few questions while you're booting that up. So
yeah, go ahead.
Why is it called the shell?
So shell is a common nomenclature term for the container of your application, the menus, the window itself, all that sort of thing. And so what shell is providing to you in Xamarin Forms is that. I mean, I keep using the actual like seashell metaphor, which is nice in that it's a beautiful design and you know, relaxing, I guess, but it's not truly what it means. So yeah, that's where the term comes from. Container for your application, providing the menu navigation and those bits.
Okay, that makes sense. The other question we had is around the shell here. There's a lot of different mechanisms that you're showing. Can you kind of combine those? Like, what's the scenario that I want to use the different things together?
So different things being flyouts and tabs and things like that?
Correct, yeah.
Sure. So let's see if I'll get the app that I was going to show is the Zappy app here real quick.
Okay.
And I'll talk about it a little bit here, but you can absolutely mix and match things. So if your application doesn't want a flyout, you can just use tabs.
Okay.
If your application needs a flyout and tabs, you absolutely can mix and match those things as well. And then what I haven't showed yet are top tabs, which is also pretty convenient. So let me see if I actually have that on my phone real quick.
Yeah, one person was asking, a few people were asking, what are these content pages, like a little bit in there? Like on the slide deck, you had, you know, like you had those arguments before, right? But when you're at the old school method, now there are these like content things with like a binding, like what's up with that? Make your fonts a little bit bigger if you could possibly.
How?
There you go. Perfect. Bigger. There you go. Perfect.
All right. Even bigger. I will make this smaller.
Oh, there we go.
So a couple things here. Somebody asked about the font image source. That's my icon right there. And let's see here. So shell content. So shell content is the shell notion that hosts the content page. So there's other things that I can provide to this that will propagate up and down through the shell. So I can give it a title. I can also, can I give it an icon? Yep, I can give it an icon. I can also say if it's going to be part of a flyout, then use this flyout icon. So I know that it does quite a bit more than that. Maybe Shane, can you describe any more about what shell content provides within the context of shell?
Yeah, I mean, not too much more than you've defined. It's really just kind of your raw content that you want displayed. So yeah, I mean, if you have multiple shell contents, then you'll get the top tabs, which is how those are laid out. Otherwise, yeah, it's just the container for your content page type, and then you can sort of articulate different things on it for how you want your current shell to be set up if you're within that page. I'm guessing you have some of those samples as well. So like if you're on the shell content, for example, and you want to hide like a tab bar or things like that. So yeah, it's just kind of your deepest level of container once you sort of get to your actual content point.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the main things to emphasize is that If I didn't have a shell content, then I would have to declare my pages like this, and they're going to get inflated or created right away. And we don't want that. We want to have that content template available to us. So that's why Shane's saying it's a way for you to declare your page type, not the page itself. Yeah, and then you also get these convenience things like this, where you can start giving a little bit more description about how this page should be treated within. And you can do these things at the content page itself. So I could go into my pages. So for example, within here, this is a content page, and I'm already saying, hey, I don't want to see tab bars when I'm looking at this page.
So basically, the shell content page is where the responsibility of the shell ends and yours as a developers begin. So that's the cut.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I'm going to go back to how I had it before, because this is much better.
Yeah, and then just to touch on a few comments I see in the stream as far as shell. So like someone asked, is it possible to navigate between native and forms pages and things like that? If I'm doing a greenfield app, should I use shell, et cetera, et cetera? So I think Dave touched on this a little before, but so the idea here with shell is that we want it to be your go-to for everything, essentially. So shell can replace your tab page, your master details page, and all of those things. So for a greenfield app, you should definitely start with shell. And if you're having to do things like swap out main pages or things like that, those are scenarios that we're trying to account for as well with shell. So the goal with shell is to never have to swap out your main page and to essentially be able to do all the layouts that you need to with it. So, and you can push to content pages, which Dave will show. So you can use sort of flat, like if you have a content page, you should push to it. But yeah, I mean, shell going forward should be all the things that you want to use. And and shell does not automatically use material. You have to set it on there.
Yeah, that was a question from Chase does it play nice with visual, or like, and does visual material apply to shell by default? And I think you said no.
Yeah, well, it doesn't apply to the shell itself, so that's coming. A more sort of material looking shell as far as like the layout aspects of it, the way like the tab bar and header bar and everything are laid out, but it will apply visual to all the internal content. So if you set it at the shell level, that will still trickle through to all your different elements.
Gotcha. And there seems to be some confusion about like what shell is meant to replace and update. And I'm going to try to summarize it, and you guys can correct me here. Is really shell looks to simplify your application structure when it comes to advanced layouts such as tabbed pages, flyout navigation pages, and help to give some structure to your application at a base level. And it also provides additional helpers inside of it to do navigation between pages in there that play with, the Xamarin.Forms navigation system. So instead of having to scaffold out all sorts of different types of tabbed pages and flyout pages and muck around with top tabs versus bottom tabs, it sort of standardizes those in general. Is that a valid sort of shell concept?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something, as I mentioned, I call it a foundation because I mentioned it's also a container for your application. It provides the flexibility for us to have a whole new architecture with which to do things that are much more difficult when you have master detail pages, tab pages, and navigation pages. Yeah, Chase is now asking, will it work with Prism? It will in the future. That's something that we've talked to Prism about, MVVM Cross, Fresh MVVM, others. I probably already missed some. So we are going to be providing hooks that they can all use to be able to intercept those navigation things and handle them in their framework's preferred way. That is not something that is currently implemented. We ended up shipping before we could get all that stuff done. There's always plenty more to do. So yeah, we'll be working on that post-haste.
We also have a spec online, so if you have any feedback about navigation and everything, please make sure to give that feedback there.
So is there a different navigation service that it uses, or could I traditionally use the same navigation service from one of the pages?
You can absolutely use the existing navigation service. Let's see, what do I have going on here? If I go up to my content and go to my control gallery. So what I have here, I'm showing you the control gallery page, and I'm also using the fancy new collection view here because why not? So I get my nice horizontal scroll. So that navigation right there, I just did a push navigation, right? From a shell page or a page within shell to another page. So let's look and see, how did I do that? So here's my index page. Destination folder is not the same. I didn't want to move it. I just wanted to open it. So of course, this thing always sits on the top, so I need to move it out of the way. All right, now my font's so big, James, that it's like, what? Where am I? All right, so control selected. In this case, I'm doing a push like this. And I believe, Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is pushing on top of the existing stack, is it not? Because I get my back button and everything.
You are muted, Shane.
Sure. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, that pushes onto a shell section. So this is, yeah, so in the context of like Android, it's basically just adding to like a view pager.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same mechanics as the navigation page, but now it's all a little bit more contained.
Yeah, so this is using the goto async method. Now, if I wanted to go back and use the existing navigation surface, I can do that here with shell.current.navigation. This one, if I can spell properly. And then from here, I can just do all of my typical push, pop, and all that sort of thing. So we proxy, I guess is the way to say it, everything, so that you don't have to worry anymore about those navigation pages. Really, we've taken all three of those concepts: tab page, navigation page, master detail page, and mentally obsoleted them, I think is the nice way to say. You just don't even need to think about them anymore. All you need to worry about is shell. And so I think that makes onboarding for new people easier, and it makes the decision tree for us when we're starting a greenfield app or anything else much easier. So all of your navigation is available here. In particular, the one that you'll want to have at your fingertips is the push modal, so that you can continue to do modal navigation. However, if you want to stay within shell and use the new navigation service, it's a URI-based navigation service. So what I have here is I'm pushing to a page called control. And somewhere in my application, I have told it what the route is for control. So when control is asked for, where are we going to go? And it looks like it moved my solution over here. So let's go back and look at my app shell. So the first thing to notice here in my app shell is that I have defined the different flyout items. And on these pages, I don't have any routes specified. If I wanted to have a route specified, I could. So I could just say route, and this is going to be my about page. Because I've not done that, because I don't need to, shell is already handling all the navigation to and from this page for me. But if I wanted to use this call from a view model like I'm doing the control page, I could do that here. However, my control page doesn't exist in my main navigation. So how do I tell shell that I want to have a page called control to get to? So in my app shell code behind, I decided to create a method called register routes, and this is where I'm going to tell my routing engine all the things that it needs to know in order to navigate and execute these routes. So in this particular case, this is my control, and when I call for control, it's going to call control page. So if we go back to my view model, that's what's happening here. Now, beyond that, I'm passing query string parameters because as you saw, perhaps, if I can bring my screen back up, when I go to the button page or the activity indicator page, button page, if I get off there, so you can see the title up there is button, and I'm now accessing the button. And so, for example, if you want to see kind of what this whole thing does, not that. Background color. Nope, don't need to hear about Trump.
I see this. So in general, kind of what you're saying is that what we see is by default, shell kind of lays the base. Instead of saying new main page and you navigate to and from all your pages as well, you can still do that today inside of shell. So you still have access to the navigation stack. However, you know, often only a few pages of your app may need to navigate, or none of your pages may need to navigate at all.
Right.
So in that instance, then you can simply, if you need to do one or two, you can add these routes, which is a very similar sort of MVC-ish kind of ASP.NET Core style routing. Yep. That developers are going to be used to. A few questions that people had were, can you replace the stack? Are you always adding onto the stack? Like, what's the situation there? Like if you have a login page or something like that.
Shane.
Yeah, so the stack story, we're still evolving. We have the spec for that up. I don't know the number offhand, but
I'll go get it while you're talking.
Okay. Yeah, all right. So the general idea here that we're following with the navigation is that we want a lot of it to be URI based. So as you could see in the sample that Dave had, when he was navigating to that page, he was doing it sort of like with a relative route. So the idea there was to, you know, anything that you route relatively will create a stack of pages. And then when you want to replace the stack, you can do that via an absolute URI. So by prefixing, say, with like two slashes. So the intent there would be to replace the stack. Yeah, so there's still a little bit to be developed there. So the scenario that we're really interested in evolving there is the login page scenario. So for example, right now you can't say just go to like a content page. So the use case there would be, say, go to a login page, which is now the only visible page, and then everything else is hidden. And then from there, the login page becomes irrelevant. So we're still evolving that particular story, but that's the direction that it's going. Is that, yeah, using an absolute route is going to essentially act as you started there. Using a relative route is going to act as if you're going there, and then you can return backwards from it.
Got it. Can you clear the backstack currently or no? Or is that in the spec?
You can. In a sense, you can. It depends kind of how we do more of in the future once we do like the more evolved routing. But like it's just using the navigation service that Dave showed with like the push async and things like that. Those are all wired up, so you should be able to still interact with those things to clear out the backstack in your current context. The current context that you're in that, or you can just do an absolute route. So if you do an absolute route to your current page, it'll swap out the backstack. Or if you use the navigation proxy, those have sort of all the same features of the other one for like removing previous pages and whatnot.
Got it.
And we do have documentation up on the current navigation stuff. Shane, I couldn't find your pull request or your issue, so I don't know. Maybe you filed it under a pseudonym, but I didn't see it. But there is documentation up, fresh documentation as of yesterday, and we're continuing to revise that as the story evolves. But yeah, check out the documentation because the navigation thing can get pretty deep, and there's so many different ways in which to do things. But for the most part, it's quite straightforward. One thing that I wanted to highlight before we maybe go on to the next question is with these query string parameters, these parameters can be passed directly into either the view itself or the view's binding context, i.e. the view model. So for example, I'm calling into the control page. So if I go look at my control page, this one here. Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Do you say yes or no to that? I always say yes. Let's see. Am I passing it? Which way am I scrolling? Windows. Windows always sends me the wrong direction. I miss having a... Yeah, so in this particular case, the control page has a view model. Where's that happening? Right there. So if I go to this and we look at, the top. I'm using these meta tags here, these query properties, and that is going to take the control and the template query string parameters and send them to the setters on these particular methods, and then my page can bind to them. So, for example, here back in my page, I'm going to say yes again. So that's how my title is getting set. So in the case of navigating before, where you would new up your view model, you would do all your work on the view model, and then you would perhaps assign that to your binding context or pass that into your page and have it handle setting the binding context. Or in the case of using a framework like Prism or MVVM Cross, where it does the marrying up of those things for you, then this kind of handles that in a slightly different way, a bit more direct, I think. But this may be something that you want to use, and I find it to be extremely convenient to be able to set properties on my destination.
Gotcha. Okay.
Other questions that came up while we were...
I was trying to mod Rui, so now it says dash mod Rui, which is pretty funny. If I only knew the commands of YouTube,
right? That would have worked on Twitch.
So you're kind of showing this in Zapier. I've shared the source code into both Twitch and YouTube.
Cool.
Do you have like a super simple like base thing, right? Because this is kind of a full application. Like, do you have a very simple kind of like here it is type of thing?
So this is more simple.
Mm-hmm.
So this is gastropods, which was the first sample that I ever made for shell. And if we look at the app shell here, and by the way, I should back up from the app shell. I keep showing the app shell, but to understand how the shell itself gets wired into Xamarin.Forms, instead of adding your main page,
zoom in on that for me.
A content page.
Zoom in there. Boop, 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 boop.
I don't know.
There you go.
So instead of adding a content page, I'm adding my shell to it. So that way I don't need to do anything else. As soon as that happens, then shell is now in control of my app. Yeah, so this is a good reference to look at. It'll get you going. There's also a template within shell, a template for shell within Visual Studio 16.1. And there was one in 16.0 as well, but the 16.1 has the newest updated one. So yeah, you can see some examples here. Our docs also have another example, which might be even more simple. But essentially, I've got a couple of flyout items happening here, tab sandwich, single page. So this is kind of showing all the different ways in which you can combine shell items to meet the needs of your UI. So this one uses top tabs. I've kind of named the routes to exemplify what we're doing. This one has bottom tabs. And this one, these are menu items. So we haven't really covered this yet. This is probably a secondary topic, but you can insert menu items that have no pages associated to them, and then you can bind commands to them and do whatever else you need to.
Gotcha. I'll be sharing this here into the chat so people can get access to this. It's sort of like more of a, here's all the things that you can do in general. There you go.
Yeah, and then the Tailwind Traders and the Conference Vision app were both part of the blog post, so you can go check those out as well. Both have a different level of complexity in terms of what they've done. The Tailwind Traders one is quite straightforward. Somebody said, I have seen the accordion control. Accordion control? We have no accordion control.
So cool. So far we have the shell in place, navigation that you've shown off. Is there any other key aspects? I guess one question people had is, like, I already have my app in place, and I'm thinking about converting my app. This is probably a good roundtable discussion on it, right? So let me bring up everyone so we can kind of pull it up here.
And I'm pretty much done, so I'll stop sharing the screen.
So get everyone up, because this is kind of a roundtable discussion we went at, because one of the big questions I wanted to wait off for the end was, hey, I've built my app. Like, I have my app, Meetup Managers, that I've released for 5 years with Xamarin.Forms now or whatever. And like, should I think about moving to the shell? What are some limitations? Is it supposed to be built for every single application? This is a V1 of shell, obviously, so it would obviously evolve over time. and talk about some of the plans for it going forward, so people can kind of correctly assess if they should take the shell route or not.
Who wants to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of spoke about that a little earlier. So like they said, like James had brought up, this is a V1 for the shell. So there's a lot of really cool features, as David had shown, and then there's a lot of really cool things that we're also wanting to bring. So, you know, more things with being able to do, you know, expanding headers and being able to play with the safe areas more, being able to say show your content underneath the tab bar. So there's even things like that where we're doing to get rid of the renderers. But there are aspects of it that might fall short for what you're currently doing in your app. So those are the things, especially with this version 1, that we're really interested to see. You know, like what are the non-starters for you going to shell? As you're sort of seeing this, as you're sort of evaluating it, you know, you can ping David or us on Twitter about things that you don't think it's going to be able to do. Because, yeah, I mean, that's the intent. The intent will be that you can take your entire app and simplify it down conceptually to a shell, and be able to do all those things. So, yeah, I mean, right now it's just sort of a layer of what things are blocking people the most, what's the most helpful to sort of arrive at those points. So if you're starting a greenfield app, you know, go through the greenfield process and log any issues you have that where you're unable to obtain what you need, or things that you're able to do in, say, vanilla forms. Are we gonna start calling it vanilla forms? Shell and vanilla. I guess classic. I don't know.
No, don't start naming things.
No, I think it's just an option, right? That's sort of the thing. It's an option of going down what's best for your application. That's what it sort of seems like based on your structure, right? So there's obviously some things that we talked about today already with the shell, which is like the navigation sort of stacks that you may have some implications of, or maybe you just have a single page and like it doesn't make sense to go down the entirety of a route of shell. But the nice thing is that what I want to point out that maybe David, you know, has there, those pages that he has are just pages, right? So you can experiment with shell with your existing pages, just to see how it flows inside of your application, where like you don't have to rewrite your entire apps just to experiment with it. You're just plugging in your existing pages. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's super easy to try. Super easy to try. I mean, with all the applications that I have in my arsenal that I commonly test with, I just add an app shell file to it, replace the main page, and off I go, right? I just start adding my pages to the shell file. And it definitely exposes some areas where it needs to improve, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. But that's great because that's why we do it. And so, you know, with Zappy, with the Conference Vision app, I quickly realized, well, how do I set a background on the flyout menu, right? So I think we've got that work coming. Rui, isn't that something that you and Pavel had done something about, adding an image to the flyout background?
Yeah, we have a PR already up for that. We're just finishing up the UI tests and the API for it.
So I didn't wait for you. I went and used a custom renderer, because pretty much everything you can get to just by extending or by creating a renderer for shell renderer, to the point where I feel like maybe we should just have that as part of our templates. I don't want to add confusion to anything, but it's just so much easier to know where to put your code when there's a landing spot, right? And so if that renderer was just already there, and that's really, I haven't needed to venture out of that single file to do anything renderer wise. And I don't like to spend time in the renderers if I don't have to.
So before we continue, sorry, I have confused everybody about this login page analysis. Everyone is going, I can't do login pages, I can't do anything.
Sure you can.
Let's break down what I meant by that, of what sort of navigation quirks may not be. It's not have anything to do with the login page. You can do login pages, but maybe Shane, can you recap that for me a little bit of maybe a pitfall that people may run into?
Yeah, so with the login page, so like right now, everything you define with your shell is, say, in the in that larger XAML file. So the idea is so right now everything that you define in that page is part of the shell, like it's part of the construct of it. So we don't have there's not the idea where you could say this login page is sort of an isolated element. So like if you go to the login page, then it sort of denies access to the rest of the application. If that makes sense. So there's ways that you could get around it. So like, for example, if you use a tab bar for your root, you could put your login page in a tab bar, and the tab bar automatically disables your flyout, so you won't have the flyout. And then you have the login page. So you can do it. It's one of those things, though, just depending on how customized you want the login page, you might run into some styling issues. You might run into some layout issues as far as like the shell, certain things maybe still being visible or maybe not being able to hide things. But like you could definitely work one out. So, that would probably be, that's one of we have an issue for that logged. And that's one of the scenarios we need to just build for, and then just make sure that it's simplified. So, I mean, anything that we're saying as far as you can't, like David just said with setting the background, he built custom renderers and he set the background. So, you can do a login page, but the hope here is that you don't have to do like the renderers, that we have a simplified workflow that'll let you do that. And if you look at even some of the issues that David's been logging, he's logging issues for, say, like a implicit stacked navigation. Like if you want to do a wizard view, where you could stack shell contents, for example, inside. Like let's say you could nest shell contents so that there was this logical progression through it. So it's more just trying to create ways to simplify the articulation of these navigation patterns, so that it can handle all those things for you. So like you could definitely do a login page now with shell, but it's would require a little more configuration than we would want it to.
And it probably depends on what type of pages or navigation things you're going to do. So for instance, in the conference app that we built, right? So that actually displays the user interface and then pulls up the login because it's optional type of thing, right? But there's many applications you go to where, the first page you go to is that, and then you clear out the stack or you navigate on. So the problem here is that every single application is different, right? And the best thing to do is you said these are issues that he's filing, and they're issues in the form that they're a GitHub issue, but they're really a feature request based on the type of app and scenario that David is building. So the more feedback that we get about what types of applications, we've handled a lot of scenarios, a majority of scenarios, but there's always going to be scenarios that are a little bit more complicated out there and that we want to build and improve on. Does that sound like an accurate statement if I was to summarize?
Yeah, very much to James' point. So with the login, I could probably overstated that a little bit, just saying, just give up now if you want to do a login page. But no, the intent is, if you have a login page scenario that is how your app works, then get that going with shell. So like my first thought with that is you could do a tab bar. You can disable your flyout so that the flyout hides. There's a back button behavior you can set which customizes how the flyout works. So you could basically disable that entire thing. You can template all of the items that are in that left flyout menu. So you could in theory disable every single one of those based on a binding property of like a view model. So I'm just saying, there's tons of hooks that we try to give you with shell. So if you're trying to do a login page, and for like James said, there's tons of different scenarios for it, and your scenario seems too difficult, log an enhancement for it so that we can address that level of customization.
So
yeah, and I don't even think it's as hard as all that. I think.
Yeah.
I know. It's more just sort of laying out different things you can do. So I guess I'm just trying to sort of prop it up on that we're trying to give as much customization, because like how if you Google like customizing hamburger icon or whatever for forms, like there's tons of hits that you'll find about having to create a custom renderer and go to the view controller and like walk up the hierarchy to get like the left tab bar item to access it. Whereas now, like Rui added a really great behavior that you just set it to, and you can set it to an icon source. You can set it to all these different things. So yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't saying that's what you'd have to do. It was more just that we've tried to make every aspect of it customizable to meet whatever scenario it is you might want.
Gotcha. So what already people in the chat have verified, you can totally build a login page. So we rabbit holed, actually, it's not the login page. It was actually some of the navigation replacement stack. And we shouldn't have ever said those words. So we'll never say those words on this feed ever again of that type of page. So we're not going to say it anymore. We're just going to talk about navigation. You can do whatever you want. You can build everything.
Yeah, and even in the native side, also in the parts of the renders, if you have to go there, Shell is also with a better architecture for having the small renders for each side of the shell, just for flyout, just for the flyout header, and lots of that kind of features just for the tabs. So it's even in that, like Shane was saying, there was lots of issues to get some parts of even when you are trying to do a custom render, you still have to know a lot about how we did it natively in the platform, and Shell will allow it to be a more simple render for everything in the native side. So that will also give you more chances and more to be successful when you extend a render in the native side. So
people are good on Shell. People want more features. Where they can find out more about Xamarin.Forms 4.0. We can move on past the Shell. You know, since we're already at 70 minutes. So David, do you want to kind of wrap up and talk a little bit more about the release notes, what's in it, things like that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Let me share my screen again real quick. Screen 2.
And I will also say that we will go deep dive on Shell and the implementation details on the next .NET Community Stand-Up, and I'll put a link to that as well. So.
All right. So where did I do this? Oh, it's over here. So if you're not familiar with where our release notes live, they are on the docs website. So as a matter of fact, if I just go back to the main Xamarin.Forms landing page, it's right here, release notes. Everybody see that? Oops,
I'll put a link as well.
Yep. So release notes. And there's a lot of stuff in here. So go back to 4.0. So we try to organize this stuff in a way that makes sense. You can see that this particular release had a lot of releases. Typically, we don't do that many pre-releases, but Shell and for the first part of the pre-release, Visual was part of that, but we shipped Visual and Material Design in 3.6, right? So that one went out a little early because it was ready before the rest of the release was. So we don't like to hold things back. We like to give you what's useful as soon as it's useful. So yeah, there's a lot of things in here. I recommend going through and looking at them. I would be curious to know from the team, maybe Stephane, since he hasn't talked in a while, what is in this release that you can remember? Because I know you do a lot of things, and I'm sure you probably haven't read these release notes, because why would you? But is there anything that stands out to you that you're like, oh, I remember doing that, and people should probably know that I did that?
So Stephane stepped out for a second.
Stephane,
he did. He left. I called on him, and he's gone.
He literally said 2 minutes ago that he had to step out for a sec. So.
Yeah. Do you have there the Shell icons for the search bar? So search handler. I think, but for example,
these are community things like the Mac OS.
And the other ones are for example, the font icon source also for the tab icons. So that's good. So you can use now the font also on your tabs. So that's great.
So one question we had is there's a lot of changes, and this is a 4.0 release, which may scare some people from upgrading. Can they just upgrade from 3.6 to 4.0?
Yeah, so the thing is like, gosh, I don't even remember which release we started it on. It might have been 3.5, maybe it was 3.4. But essentially what we had been releasing was all along the way in parallel with these 4.0 pre-releases. So really, it was more around the 6 or 7 where things diverged from the stable releases, which is kind of odd. It's not the normal way of doing things, but it allowed us to continue working in the same code base while still shipping stables. So yeah, there are a lot of things in here. Some of these things are representative of just 4.0 things, if not all of them. But my feeling is I've upgraded several applications so far. Trying out, branch your app, upgrade it, and see how it goes. I think it's going to be quite good. It's not like when we went to 3.0 where there was a big .NET standard change that we implemented that required a bit more polish in your CI or in your build steps. So this one should be pretty straightforward. And if you're not even using Shell, then it's even more straightforward. So it definitely is a major release. Like I said, I covered the image source stuff, and we took quite a bit of care to make sure that we didn't break you in doing that. Even though we obsoleted those old properties and provided the new unified properties, we didn't remove them, for example.
Gotcha. Yes, and I have already updated all my apps to 4.0, and they all went smooth. So very, very
and
good.
Most of the code of Shell some of them is around since 3.5.0. So some of, like David was saying, was already the same code base.
Yeah, so it was in the same code base, isolated so that it wasn't interfering, but yeah.
So
chances are if we already broke in previous versions.
And fixed it.
You are good.
So here on these, so when people are going through the issues or features, there's issues fixed and also features, so people can click on any of these and find more information in general, correct?
Yeah, what you got on the left-hand side is the GitHub issue or enhancement request, whatever it happens to be. And then on the right-hand side, you have pull requests. So in some of these, there's 2 pull requests because they were different pull requests for different platforms. But yeah, you can see both the issue and the pull request and get all the details on it. And we try to make sure that the descriptions themselves are pretty clear, but certainly if there are other things that we could do to make them more clear, let us know. When we do try to provide, I think up here at the top, I provided some additional color commentary for what we've been doing. All the way at the top, yeah. So, try to provide a little bit of guidance. If you were using Shell previously, you may have had a route host, and route scheme in the head of your Shell file. Those are no longer used, so you can just remove those. For example, the Shell background color is now called Shell background color. So, they're preview features that. It looks like my formatting's jacked up. Didn't get my markdown for my bullets. So there's some changes in here that you should pay attention to as well. Let's see what other breaking changes were in here. So that was the Shell one. Moved iElement configuration to an internal structure on cell. Anybody know what that was about?
It's not that interesting. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So a while ago we added a behavior so that you could add custom backgrounds to cells. But there's this really odd combination of things where if you have, so like in the UWP list view, if the elements are binding to a class where the class implements an interface that's a constraint generic, it causes the performance to tank. So this is something that it's very edge case, so we've logged it with the UWP team and whatnot. So it was a way to sort of internalize that. We internalized that into the cell element. So it's just kind of proxies it into the internal class so that the outbound API was the same, but the signature of, say, the class was different. That way the UWP performance was maintained.
Yeah, so it looks here from this, what we're really seeing is that a lot of the things that are in the breaking changes, which is always where you want to kind of look for any release, but of course a major release, these seem to be all around either Shell, which was always in preview and kind of evolving, and then also the images, which we've talked about in general, but a lot of these are bug fixes and things like that in general. So a lot of people are asking, like, what if I have existing controls and I have this and I have that? Well, there are no breaking changes that would break any of your existing, renderers or third-party controls, in which they would all just work, because we've been shipping a lot of these continuous in the nonstop cycle, and we've also had 10 pre-releases over the time to do that. So this to me, like when you look at this, any breaking change, quote unquote, is literally just a few bullet points, and some of those are new features that weren't available previous. So those are breaking change from one to other. So the difference, though, even with the breaking change of the image sources, for instance, those aren't even a breaking change, because they've just deprecated the old one. So the break would be when we remove it, but it's not a break. It's just an enhancement, actually. So this list is actually smaller when you combine those. So anyways, that's how I look at it.
We're very careful about not doing breaking changes unless we think it's actually going to benefit the product. So
yeah. Do we want to go on? We have about another 40 minutes left. Do we want to go on to Gerald's stuff, or what is next?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's wanted to have Gerald come on to talk about his contribution, in particular the one with the web view, but also wanted to grill him on what it's like contributing. So Gerald, why don't you go ahead and share, and I will stop sharing.
Thank you, David.
I love all the questions coming in the chat too, by the way. This is great.
Yeah, and Gerald, maybe you want to give people a little bit of background on yourself and your contributions.
A little bit about me. Well, I'm just a simple, plain developer from the Netherlands doing my thing, loving Xamarin and Xamarin.Forms. And so at some point I was like, I have been using all this stuff and it's great, and I want to do something back, and I can just go on, create issues and rant maybe on Twitter like, hey, this stuff doesn't work. Why is it like that? But stuff is open source now, right? So I can do something about that. And coincidentally, I just came back from the Techorama event in Belgium, which is awesome, by the way, so go check it out. And I got to talk with two other guys the other day, yesterday, and they were like, yeah, this year I'm totally going to contribute to Xamarin.Forms as well. And I was like, yeah, do it. It's awesome. But they were like, yeah, I've said that a few times before, but the problem is those people are so good, and I'm going to put in a PR, and they're going to be like laughing at me, and what is this, you puny human? We don't need this. So they were kind of like afraid, and I actually like. I'm exaggerating here. I see a couple of shocked faces like, oh my God, is people saying that? No, they didn't really put it like that. But I felt the same way. I can remember that before I did my first contribution, and I was like, yeah, I mean, who am I to contribute to this great framework that is out there, to the big people at Microsoft? And but yeah, so the thing that actually got me through it, I think, is to just whenever you think is a bug, go into the code, check out if you can actually find the source of whatever you think is going wrong, and that way you can decide whether something is a bug or not, or maybe it's just you doing something wrong, or having a wrong perception of what the API is supposed to do, etc., etc. And at the same time, you will see that the code that is written in the Xamarin.Forms framework, in this case, is not very different, probably, hopefully, from the code you are writing. I mean, it's just code. It's just C#. You can read that. You can write that. You're doing it. So you can contribute. And what really pushed me over the edge, actually, back then, so maybe I should share my screen at this point, and you don't have to look at me anymore, is actually, can I get rid of this? Whoops, there we go. Is this thing, which is already from 2018 by Adam Petley. You might know him if you have been around for some time. And this is something that came to known by the community sprint. And he basically got together a couple of people from the community and said, hey, let's do some kind of sprint. And I think it was focused around the F100 issues, David. Maybe not specific to that, but yeah, people ended up doing a lot of those, which were issues that were labeled with the F100, so the 100 paper cuts, so the things that you really want to see fixed in Xamarin.Forms, but might not be big enough to have the biggest priority by the actual Xamarin.Forms team. So we took that upon ourselves and just took a bunch of them, started working on the list, and got in a big list of PRs, I think, in a short amount of time to fix a lot of those issues. And yeah, that was something like, hey, all these other people are going to do it right now as well. If I have any questions, I can just ask them, and let's just start with one and see what happens. And yeah, now here I am talking on a live stream about a contribution I did. So that is a bit of background on where I came from, at least like contributing. And I think my big message with this is like, yeah, I totally feel you with it can be intimidating, but I have some experience with different contributions here and there, and I can say the Xamarin.Forms team is like super nice, and they, of course, they will have some feedback probably, but you can only learn from that, right? So just improve it, just do some things, and it isn't weird that they have like all the experience because they are working with it every day. So they're probably going to mention to you something that you can improve. But you can learn from that and you improve it, and whenever your first contribution get merged, it's a super cool feeling. So yeah, you should just do it. I think there is 1,300 issues to choose from right now, so let's go.
Yeah, lots of enhancements in there, not just bugs.
No, sure, and that's the thing, right? It's not just bugs, and it can be anything that's not even listed here. So, well, let's go into this specific contribution. I don't think it's a very much exciting feature, but it's typically one of the F100. You can see it's labeled here as well, and done as part of the community sprint.
Can you zoom in for us really quick there?
Yes, sure.
And why did you choose to do this one?
Thank you.
Well, just because it was there, actually. Because I think if we look back,
you were bored one evening. You had too much water.
Well, you know, after I got the taste for doing contributions, I would go through the list and I would go the list of issues, and then I would think to myself, like, can I do this in a fashionable time? Yes or no? I mean, that's something else, right? We do this like probably next to our jobs, next to our day jobs. So time is limited. You also want to spend some time with your family and do other stuff. So I didn't want to, at that time, I didn't want to pick up like big ass features that take up a lot of time. So this was a small thing that I could pick up. And I think someone else actually started on this one first and had to drop out, probably because they had different priorities at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can pick this up and finish this. And there are a couple of these. I don't know if this is specific to the enhancement label, but they have this like super clear spec actually, like, hey, what do we expect? What it's going to do here? Written by the unfollowable Samantha Houts, so that's great. And there's even like a suggestion for the implementation, like this is how we want the API to look. These are the expected results, and in this case, it was for the Android web view. On Android, you have this mechanism to be able to zoom the web view, which wasn't enabled in Xamarin.Forms yet. So whenever someone wanted to do this, they had to go out and write a custom renderer or effect or something to reach that platform-specific code. So yeah, it probably didn't impact a lot of people, but if you were the one person that was affected by this, then you would be grumpy and be like, oh, why isn't this provided in Xamarin.Forms? So that's basically what the F100 is all about, right? Those small things, and yeah, I took it upon myself to implement this one. So this is Android specific. So yeah, then you already have some sense of where this is going. There are a couple of platform specific APIs implemented with this super cool mechanism that it will only have effect for the platform that you are targeting. And in this case, it's Android. So just for Android, you have these two APIs that will enable the zoom controls. So the zoom controls will be enabled as a whole, and also if you want to display the zoom controls. We'll see about that, how it works in a little bit. But these two together will let you set some properties on the Android specific web view and give you control over this specific zoom behavior. So for iOS UWP, nothing is happening, backwards compatibility, and then at the very end there is a very nice thing like, what's the difficulty going to be?
Easy.
So this is actually where my secret comes out. I just picked the ones that were difficulty easy. Yeah, simple as that.
It makes sense to me.
So if you want to get started, I mean, that is something that you want to see, right? Like, is something going to be easy? Okay, then I might start on this one.
Yeah, and that's kind of a nice thing to kind of talk about too. People kind of talk about like, oh, there's so many different, GitHub issues, but really those GitHub issues are these enhancements or feature requests, or there could be some edge case bug that's in there, and you can kind of go through all of them. So while there are a lot, you can kind of, it seems like you could pick based off the difficulty rating, maybe something that you just want to implement. I mean, I did the checkbox because I had to write my own checkbox. So I did a pull request for that, right? I wrote the spec for it, but stuff like that. So I like that the difficulty rating is there as well. So you can kind of go through. And this is cool because now that you've done these two properties, if people are like, I want to do all the attached properties or whatever for it, you could follow the pull request.
Right. If you do a couple of these easy ones, then you get a hang with the code base. You see how things are implemented, and then you can just grow from there into more advanced features. So yeah. So and here's what I said. Alan was saying like, hey, I can take this, and then it stopped for some time, and then I picked it up, I think. So what's it all about? Let me get in it right here. I've created a very, very simple sample app which just shows you the web view. And there's two ways to do this, of course. I like to do everything from XAML, so you can include this platform-specific platform configuration thing here, and then you can just add this this property onto your web view and just make it work from here. Or if you want to do it from a code behind perspective, that's also supported. So then you just name your web view, go back here, and you can say, okay, I want to enable the zoom controls and display the zoom controls. So these are two things that you can set separately. Again, only for Android. And whenever we run this, it's going to take up a little time to come up with the emulator.
Oh, you chose Android? Yeah, well, you have to do Android, right?
Yeah.
It's platform specific.
There you go.
There it is. And I think I'm loading Xamarin.com, which is looping to some kind of Microsoft page right now. So you just get the web view. You can do everything that you expect from it. But now you can also multi-touch. So I can do this pan gesture, and I can zoom it, and I can go back. And whatever this enables zoom controls to true. The enable zoom controls might be a bit misleading or not. It is actually literally the name that it is from Android. And also the zoom control. So if I go back out here and I say,
do you want to go to a cooler web page?
A cooler web page.
Yeah, go to aka.ms http://, aka.ms/Xamarin.
Whoops. I can't type under pressure.
I know, right?
There you go. Perfect.
There we go.
We'll just fix this URL for you.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually that URL will go to this URL. So.
Okay. So hopefully, it's all maybe my demo.
Did I just break your demo? We'll see.
Yeah. So but that might be a nice bridge. Because if you have like your view port width in HTML set to a very specific value so that you disable the zoom effectively, then this is not going to work. But that is like default Chrome behavior. You can get around that, but then it doesn't work. So that's also like the note that I have to put in here. But already you can see the zoom control showing up here. And you can also use that as well. And they will show up whenever you also do this pinch and pan gesture, so they will disappear after some time, I think. Also, I think it goes without saying that if you have this enable zoom control set to false, the zoom controls will automatically not show up as well because they will have no effect. So you have to use them together. And yeah, that is just a small thing that I have contributed to this new major version, but hopefully it will make some people happy.
So what would you say, Gerald, has been the hardest part about contributing? Well, once you got over, just the fear or the trepidation or the...
I don't know, actually. Like I said, it's once you get over that bump of just okay, let's just see what feedback comes in, and everyone was super nice. And of course, again, maybe I shouldn't have stopped sharing my screen. Let's see what the actual feedback was on this particular one. So again, if you're going to put in a PR, you're going to have to fill out the template for this. So what did you change? What issue? What APIs did you put in? Blah, blah, blah. So the thing is, it probably took a while because this was August, this was September. So then I start asking like, hey, do I still need to do anything? Poke. Rebase. So nothing major going on here. For extra credit, well, I'm always up for extra credit. So, there was some suggestions for like, hey, maybe you can do this, think of this. And yeah, of course, I did that. And then it just gets merged because it lies around for some time. You might have to do some rebases. I think that is what happened here. I actually made a bug in this as well, which is already fixed as well, I think. But what is my major thing after that? I think nothing. I mean, each contribution I have just learned more. I think I screwed up some things while updating my own repository at some point. So I think Stephane pointed me like, hey, do you want to rebase your stuff instead of just getting all these kinds of weird commits in there with your pull requests. So and I was like, okay, I probably should be knowing this. And you feel like a not so good developer at times, but I mean, you find it out, or you ask the guy or girl who give you that suggestion, and they will help you along. So yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so the one question that maybe Samantha can kind of help with here is, so here we kind of see this, you kind of work through rebasing. I know one tip that I have is when you fork, okay, so my pro tip that I've learned from working with Essentials, and maybe, well, you can talk about this before I ask Sam the question, but this is how I work, and correct me if I'm wrong. So I will fork it, like I fork Xamarin.Forms, and then I create a new branch off whatever branch, right? I don't commit just to master of my fork because that makes it really hard to pull upstream. Like this is just Git issues, right? But when you make a fork and then you make a branch, it's easier to go from Xamarin.Forms master into your master and then up to your branch. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is basically it. But I think I learned a lot about Git also by doing this. I mean, I have worked with repositories, which is basically just me or a handful of other people. But this is on such a massive scale, and PRs coming in from other people, and that is just something that I had to learn as well. But you're totally right. You have to do like the branch on your own repository. And the thing I did in the beginning was just I did one contribution at a time. So I would finish up the one, PR got merged, delete my own fork, then create a new one fresh, and then did the next contribution. But when I get the hang of it, I did more at the same time, and I was in trouble because how am I can't just delete my own fork now because things will probably happen. I don't know. I never dared try it. But so then if you do that on your separate branches, then you just update master from the upstream one each time, and then just start your new branch from there. And
Nice. And then Sam, maybe you can talk about, because I know there's a lot of comments on here. So people were asked, like, how are the PRs merged? Like, where did they go? Did they go into master? Is there some other magical branch that they go into? Like, how does it work?
I'd like to know.
Yeah. How does it work? How does it work to contribute?
Yeah, so they go directly into the branch that you target. So depending on what you're doing, if you're trying to fix a regression, you can target the branch that you want to fix, the release. So we have a 3.6 branch for the 3.6 release, a 4.0. Soon we'll have a 4.1. So those are the branches that are active releases. You can put bug fixes into those, regression fixes, whatever. And new enhancements can go straight into master. And those will go into the next release that we branch. Right now, master is 4.1. So anything that's in master is going to go straight into the 4.1 release. So we don't hold fixes or anything. As soon as they're merged, they're going to go into the next release.
Got it. And then if someone is contributing, how do they know what to target? I guess, like, if I'm like, I don't know what to do, is there guidance or something?
We try to milestone the issues.
Okay.
If we know that they're a regression, then you can use the milestone as your guide. Otherwise, if we think that this is something that's worthy of going into a different branch than master, we'll just let you know, and we'll add that retarget branch tag to it.
Oh, cool.
And then we'll help guide you through that.
I think that's what I had once. I mean, I just opened the PR to master or whatever is default. And then at some point it was like, yeah, do you want to retarget it to this version? And I was like, yeah, sure, I know how to do that. So I Googled a bit and I found out how to do it. It wasn't that hard. But yeah, also here you just get some guidance on how to do it, where to do it. And yeah.
Awesome. All right, we got 20 minutes left. Or what do we want to do next, David? Do we want to try to have Shane magically update stuff? Is that enough time? 20 minutes?
Well, maybe, but I wanted to at least spend some time asking a few more questions because there were definitely some topics that I wanted to hit.
Okay.
Probably we're talking about contributing, and I know because I'm on the inside and I'm part of sprint planning, how much we dedicate towards doing things like working with the community and the contributors to make sure that we get releases or get PRs merged and get releases out the door. We've been shipping, I hope everybody has noticed, at least every 6 weeks, a new version, and then service releases even faster than that. So a lot of releases have been going out, which also I think is one of the reasons why 4.0 is probably not a huge bump for a lot of people, because even though it is a major version and we've done some bigger things in it and we're unveiling shell, it's still, we've been shipping a lot. Whereas when we shipped 3.0, if everybody remembers this, when we shipped 3.0, we had not shipped a version for like 3 months. So yeah, we learned from that mistake. And so we've been shipping much more frequently. So I'll direct this to Samantha, of course. So when you're looking at planning for the team and who you have available and all that sort of thing, what is your thought process in terms of managing bugs versus enhancements versus all the community contributions that are out there? Like new PRs come in. I know you've got scripts. Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so unofficially, we budget about 25% of our time for just reviewing PRs. So if we have 15 working days in a sprint, that's like 4 days worth of every engineer just looking at PRs. For PR review for us, that's not just looking at the code and making sure that it's matching our style guide or whatever. We actually get in there and we test it and we make sure that it works and make sure that it's not breaking anything else. So it's pretty significant. It's important work. And as far as our community is concerned, probably about a third of the PRs that come in every month are from our community, which is amazing. It's really good. Those can range from like the little small fixes to the big features that are hitting every platform. And we're so excited about that. That's really good. So because you know that we test everything, that means that not all PRs can get merged right away. So that's kind of how that is.
Well, and I've seen the charts that you generate on a sprint by sprint basis as well. It seems like the community contributions have been going up kind of since maybe they're holding steady right now, but I know that Hacktoberfest was a big spike for us. And it didn't seem to really die off too much. Like what have you been seeing recently?
Yeah, so we get probably our average is about 80 PRs submitted every month, and about a third of those, like I said, are from the community. So those are 25 to 30, sometimes 40 of them are from the community. So, and that has, like you said, been holding true since Hacktoberfest in October.
But I think that's also like a nice incentive, right? Like the one I had with the community sprint, like the Hacktober is also something that people drag them over the line to do their first contribution. And from there, maybe they're like, hey, this is much easier than I thought. And they keep doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, and you got a T-shirt for that, didn't you, Gerald?
I did not, because I did a lot of contributions, but not in October for some reason. Well, no, I don't know. I forgot to apply to the right website or something. No.
Well, as I understand it, we did not get T-shirts either.
Oh.
rules. So let's see, who else is still here?
T-shirt.
Did Stephane come back? Stephane, are you there?
He was back.
Yeah, I'm there.
Oh,
So Stephane, I looked in the in our team channel, and I noticed your name next to a bunch of issues or PRs and a bunch of exclamation points. What the heck is that all about?
Let me check which one. I mean,
well, it's the script. It's the script that Samantha runs.
Yeah,
I'm basically
it's
just prompting you to tell everybody how this works.
Yeah, so basically the 3 exclamation mark is when I'm late on the reviews. So
I wasn't trying to call you out on being late.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to describe the process.
So basically for every incoming PR, there is a script, there is a bot, there is some, I don't know which one is which, but there is something that assign reviewers for each of those PRs. So most of the incoming PRs are assigned during the first week or first month, and those one gets reviews. That doesn't mean that they got merged quick, but we have an eye on almost everything incoming.
Well, I think they get that script, Samantha, doesn't it run and somebody gets assigned as a reviewer within the first 24 hours, right? Something like that? Or is it just by the week?
It depends. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, no, it's basically as soon as I run the script, I run it manually. But yeah, it tries to get them as soon as possible.
So it's the Sam bot. That's what it is. Yeah, so I mean, we have these processes, and I get to see this happening, and I get to be part of the conversations about how we can better make sure we don't lose track of things. And when I see when people reach out to me via email or Twitter, I keep pointing this way because that's where my other screen is, and that's where all the chatters are. But I get those messages, and so I'm like, oh well, how do we keep track of these things, and hopefully we don't have issues or PRs that fall into the crevices, the cracks in our process. But yeah, we do get these alerts on a regular basis. We have processes around how quickly we can respond to them, how frequently we're checking them to see if a comment has been made, right, or if somebody has addressed the feedback that's on the issue, because there's such a volume of these things, and I think we may budget 25%, but I have the feeling we spend more time than that on these.
For sure, we do.
I do.
So was there maybe other teams are doing that as well? Weren't there plans to also do some PR reviews like out in the open, like live streaming those things, or?
Right. So we did do the stream with Shane, and I say we. I think Shane just did it, and it was over on. I put this link in the YouTube chat, but it's twitch.tv/Xamarin.Forms team. And so the team has started to do some streaming, and one of them was a pull request. As a matter of fact, it was James's checkbox. And it wasn't a review. It was just kind of trying to move it across the finish line, because that's something else that we do, is that when there is a larger feature and, somebody like Alan Gerchik goes and has a baby and can't finish his web controls.
That was it.
Web view. That's what it was.
Yep.
Yeah. And he can't finish the Zoom. Then if somebody like yourself doesn't pop in and take over, then if we have the bandwidth and it makes sense, we'll step in and try to get that thing across the finish line. So that is the stream that Shane did. And we do want to do more PR reviews in the open with the person who's contributed them. I think it makes probably the most sense to do those for the larger ones. So
Sure.
we talked about doing that with Morten, with the UWP shell pull request, since we've been talking about shell, and some people might be wondering, okay, well, where is it for UWP? So we have a pull request for that. Morten stepped up and was like, I'm not waiting for you guys. We're going to get this thing done. We're smart. We're the community. And so it looks fairly good. I don't know, Shane, we don't need to go into the weeds and talking about the pull request, but I do think it would be cool to do that pull request in the open. And we certainly can't do all of them in the open, but, when I say in the open, I mean on a live stream.
Yeah. Well, I agree. Doing all would be too much, but it might be nice to find some kind of balance between like the bigger ones and maybe some smaller ones for the first time contributors, to not scare them off with only the big ones, and they're still going to be like, ooh, that's too much for me. So maybe it might help to drag some people across the line to just do a couple of smaller ones to see like, okay, there are some remarks, but I can fix that and get it done.
Cool. All right, we're running out of time here. Do you want to quickly go over what's next in Xamarin Forms, our roadmap, which is open source, so people know where to go? We should have an aka.ms for it.
There is one. I think it's aka.ms xf-roadmap, I think.
Oh, there you go.
But I haven't actually gone there in a while. It may have expired. Who knows? All right, where's my browser? Let's go with this one. Nope. Did I move it? Oh,
waiting for you. Oh, gosh.
Here we go.
There we go.
Okie dokie. So it's up on GitHub. So if you go to the wiki, you can go to roadmap. And actually, if you're in the documentation, it also exists over here. If I can learn how to scroll the browser. Oh, come on, you can do this. What is wrong with this thing? I really miss having a trackpad because these old wheels, I've got one of those.
There's a bar on the far right-hand side that would allow you to move that.
Yeah, right.
I don't know if you know that.
I'm learning. I'm always learning. I've learned so many things. So somewhere in here, is it under release notes? I saw it just a moment ago.
It's right there.
It is.
Yeah, right there.
Roadmap. Right. So you can get to it from here as well. So on the roadmap, we have just shipped 4.0, so that's now out. So I could go ahead and update this and get that off of there. So again, we're shipping about every 6 weeks. So when I give a time window like this, we're essentially saying for pre-releases all the way up through a stable release, it's going to land within that time frame. And so when we do our sprint planning, it's for every 3 weeks, and we look at what needs to be done and where we're going with things. And there's always going to be some juggling, some concessions made, some reprioritization. So even looking at what's scheduled here for 4.1, considering we're going to be branching very shortly, not all of this is likely to make it, and we'll end up getting pushed off to 4.2. But in terms of what we're looking forward to doing, there's a couple of things that came up. Actually, there's a lot of really good feedback that came up through doing the visual challenge and the collection view challenge. And if you liked doing that and you're looking for more opportunities, we are absolutely dreaming up other challenges to put out there. And the great thing is it's not just for the community to participate, but it's also for us internally to have something to do to use our own product. So that's a lot of fun. But the thing for you to know is that when you do those things and you submit those pull requests and you provide notes on what went well, what didn't go well, and what you want to see changed, that's really good information for us. It's very practical and actionable because it's tied to a specific pull request. It's an actual implementation thing. So a lot of that is what's feeding some of these work items, especially with the shell stuff. So, hey, how can I add a flyout footer? I need to be able to, or want to be able to template the entire flyout so that I don't need to go create a custom renderer. So some of those may end up sliding because we haven't even done the specs for them. Build kind of delayed a few things. But in terms of other things that are coming up, quite a few F100s still outstanding. the media element media player, which has a pull request, and then camera view, which also has a pull request. I think there's some feedback on those, some things we'd like to see done, and they are much larger pull requests than the norm, but would be very, very useful to have inside the product. Radio button, letter spacing. Actually, did letter spacing actually make it? Gosh, I thought that was really close, or maybe it already made it. There's so many pull requests, it's so hard to keep them in your mind all at once. Adding visual state manager targets. We actually have a pull request for that. That'll be nice to have if you are a visual state manager user. Being able to specify the target on your property setters is extremely useful. And actually, James, you mentioned using a lot of web views in your list view, whether you were being sarcastic or serious.
Hundreds of them.
This is going to replace, hopefully, anybody's need to do anything like that. Because typically you're using that to get some simplified HTML formatting.
Beautiful. And
what you may not know is that Android and iOS labels, as well as UWP, I believe, all natively handle HTML now. And so we can do that here, and we have a pull request for it. And I don't remember who did that. Gerald, that's not one of yours, is it?
I think I still need to finish that, yes.
Open it.
Yeah.
No, don't do it. No.
Now let's find out. You were saying you were waiting on us for the last one.
Oh, look,
so
November
this is the other
2018.
side of the story, right?
Oh, no.
Let's go down to the bottom. Oh, let's use this bar over here on the.
There you go.
Look at all the platforms I covered. I had even Tizen.
I haven't found the spare time to pick this up yet. Wah wah.
Yep.
February.
Life happens.
I've got some good news for you, my friend.
What is
You're about to have time to work on this.
Really?
Yes, because if anybody who's listening doesn't know already, Gerald has accepted an offer to join the Xamarin.Forms team.
Yeah.
So, not fully official, I suppose, until your first day, but don't mess it up between now and then, okay?
I'll do my best.
So quite a few things coming up. And then 4.2, you'll notice that once we get past July, August and September start to look a bit more thin. As mentioned already, as we keep going, things will start to slide down the list a little bit. And we may, have some other things that come up through feedback that get added that aren't even represented here. But this is also representative of just the reality that this is summertime and a lot of people start to take vacations. So we wanted to be realistic about our bandwidth and our capacity to do new work during that time. And we want to make sure that we're giving priority also to, the housekeeping things, making sure that we're taking care of our bug workload and not letting that get out of hand, and all the housekeeping things with regards to our UI tests and things like that. So I did post in the chat a little bit ago in the YouTube chat a link to our GitHub label for, I believe it was called not the help wanted, but the other one, which lists a bunch of kind of the lower hanging fruit, easier to contribute to issues. So if you're looking for something to get started with, I would definitely check that out. And of course, if there's something that's not already in progress that's on this list here, you should check that out. Something that I know Shane and Alex Corrado had some time to talk about this past week was the shell segues. So that'll be a really nice one to have. And then also shell transitions, the ability to control, is it a page curl? Is it a left to right transition? Is it a crossfade? All those sorts of things, which in existing Xamarin.Forms applications can be quite a bear to deal with. But with shell, with the new architecture, we believe will be easier. That's the hope anyway. So.
Yeah, and the nice thing here is if you really, really wanted one of these, like you could just go do it, right? Like even though it's in a release, like that's sort of the plan, but you could just go do it, right?
Yeah. Yes, please.
All right. Cool. All right, we should wrap up. Now, we did want to do some live coding, but maybe David, you and Shane could continue on. You guys we all have, basically everybody has a Twitch stream now. The Xamarin team, we've all kind of gone all in on the live coding. I live code on Fridays on mine, and I know you were building Zappy live, and Shane's been also doing pull request reviews and things like that. So maybe you want to pick this up and schedule something out. We'll put that on the blog. Maybe do something a little official. Hope everyone enjoyed this. I know I enjoyed it. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. in general. Thanks for Gerald and Sam and Jane and Stephane and Rui and David and all of the hundreds and thousands of people that joined in to view, which is really awesome. Appreciate it. Any final words from anyone?
Let's see. Can I share my screen really quick?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, because there was so much talk about logging in. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see your screen, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a login flow for Shell that essentially works. So you have this starting out as your login page. And the cool thing is you can map these ideas. So I've just set the route to the name of the login view model. And then now that's all you have to pass in to go to async for it to go in. So you can essentially replace the entire navigation service here just by grabbing the view model type name instead of having to do the whole thing. So just kind of a quick demo of kind of neat ways that you can wire it together. So and this in fact does work. So.
Is that view model navigation? I love it.
Yeah, and it was easy as that. So if you just, I mean, you can set your routes to whatever you want logically, and then that can just map to whatever sort of concept you want to represent within your navigation stream. So
cool. Awesome. Well, we will post links to all of that. And of course, this video is found on our archive on the Xamarin Developers YouTube. So you can hit that subscribe button if you're literally on the YouTube page right now, which hundreds of you are. Tap on that. We have new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday, and we'll also be doing more live streams here. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Any other additional words? David, final words.
Final words. Thank you so much to everybody that's contributed. For those of you who come out and ask questions, it all makes a difference. It all helps us to understand how to better provide software for you, because we're not making this for ourselves so much as we're doing it to help you do better and to enjoy using the platform and stay in the C# and the .NET and the Visual Studios that you love. So thank you for participating with us. Please keep the feedback coming. Don't be shy. We're all super nice. Hopefully, as you can see, we're all super nice. And thank you, James, for hosting us. This was really great. Having you in Redmond makes all of this stuff so much easier for us. So
it does.
We can stay at home.
Yes. Gerald, any final departing words from you?
Well, I am really excited to join this awesome team, and what else can I say? Looking forward to working with this awesome community. Also, this is actually the first live stream thing that I've been doing. I'm, I think, the only developer that does not have a Twitch account. Well, I have an account, but not live streaming yet. So let's change that, and I can see a lot of nice responses and questions, and looking forward to much more of this.
How about you, Sam?
Go update.
Go update. And is Stephane hiding back there somewhere? Or is he gone? I can't see unless he talks.
No, I was muted.
Okay.
So yeah, go just like Sam. Go update, test shell, report issues. There aren't many, but there are probably some. And keep posted for anything new in 4.1.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Yes, this has been fantastic, and we want to do more of this and be more interactive. You can, of course, find us, like I said, right here on the Xamarin Developers YouTube channel. We have new videos all throughout the week. Additionally, once a month, we have the .NET Community Stand-Up, where all of these lovely people and other lovely individuals from the Xamarin team come on to talk about that. That's the first Thursday of every month on the .NET Foundation YouTube or the Visual Studio Twitch page, which is where we're also live streaming right now. And of course, there's other ways to catch up. So follow our blog, the Xamarin blog. You can just Google that. The Xamarin Podcast, the Xamarin Podcast, or on Twitter at Xamarin HQ. That's going to do it. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much again. I got out all the buzzwords. Ding the bell, do the thing, subscribe. You know what to do. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone. Cheers.